life is like just one big game of trying to keep up with change.
Mm,
You're not alone, right?
definitely not.
So many people feel that way. And today we're diving into a book that's become, kind of a classic guidebook, I guess you could say, for navigating all those twists and turns.
Mm.
We're talking about Who Moved My Cheese by Spencer Johnson.
Yeah. Who Moved My Cheese? It's a deceptively simple book.
It really is.
This little story, a parable really, that somehow manages to pack in so much wisdom about how we all deal with change.
Yeah, and who doesn't love a good story?
Exactly.
But before we get lost in the maze here, for anyone who maybe hasn't read the book, can you just give us the basic setup here? What are we dealing with?
Okay, so picture this.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a maze, right?
Okay.
And inside we've got our four main characters. There are two mice, Sniff and Scurry. And then there are two little people, Hem and Haw. And they're all running around in this maze looking for cheese.
Okay, so far so good.
Right. And so, of course, the cheese, that represents what we all want out of life. Whatever that cheese may be for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Could be a dream job, a loving relationship, you name it.
I like it.
Yeah.
So we've all got our cheese. We can all relate to that feeling of, kind of looking for something good in this big maze of life.
Yeah.
But then change happens.
It always does. And that's the thing. The cheese, as they say, it stops appearing where it used to. And this is where it gets interesting. This is where we see those different reactions from each character.
I want to talk about those reactions because we've got Sniff and Scurry are mice, and they seem to handle things a little bit differently than our little people, Hem and Haw. What would you say is the key difference there?
Well, the mice, they have this very simple worldview. They rely a lot on instinct.
Yeah.
Sniff, he's our perceptive one. He is incredibly perceptive. He's the first one to pick up on even the slightest hint of change. Like if the cheese supply starts to dwindle, he notices it right away.
He's on it.
He's on it. And Scurry is our action-oriented guy. He's all about action. Like the moment he sees what's going on, he doesn't waste time overthinking it. He's like, all right, he's go find some new cheese. And he's off.
He's off to the races. So action and observation, that's their winning combo, it sounds like. What about Hem? We got to talk about him. He seems to be the character that everyone, maybe not loves, but definitely recognizes.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, I've been there.
Oh, yeah, we've all been a Hem at some point or another.
Right.
He is that voice of resistance that creeps into our heads, absolutely terrified of change.
Yeah.
Clinging to the way that things used to be. He's the one who's throwing a fit. He's the one that's like, who moved my cheese? This isn't fair.
Oh, you know what? I have totally said that in my head more times than I would like to admit. Like, literally, those words have come out of my mouth. What about Haw? Where does he fit into this whole thing?
Haw, I think, represents the part of all of us that, we struggle, but then ultimately we adapt and evolve. He initially reacts very much like Hem, right? He's stuck. He's in denial. He's afraid to kind of venture out into the unknown.
Right, but he doesn't stay stuck.
Right.
There's a turning point for him.
Exactly. And that's where Who Moved My Cheese, I think, moves beyond just being a cute story. Because Haw starts to understand that, clinging to the past, especially when the cheese is so clearly gone, it's pointless. And more importantly, he starts to see that change, even when it feels scary, can actually lead to something even better.
It's that aha moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you realize that change is not something to fear, but actually it can be an incredible opportunity for growth. How does he get there, though? What is that process like for him? So we've got, the mice over here adapting purely on instinct, and then Hem, who's just totally stuck in resistance. But what I think is so fascinating is how Haw kind of navigates that in-between space. He doesn't, magically transform overnight.
Right. Definitely not. And that's one of the things I think Who Moved My Cheese does so well. It really shows us that change is a process.
Right. It's a journey.
It is. It is. So Haw, he starts by just acknowledging his fear, right? Just realizing okay, this is a thing that's holding me back.
Yeah. Name it to tame it, as they say.
Exactly. He even starts visualizing himself, actually enjoying new cheese, which I think is so interesting. It's like he's giving his brain a little sneak peek.
Yeah, I love that part, that he uses visualization, because it's like you're giving your brain, like you said, a little preview of what could be.
Absolutely. And what's even more interesting about Haw is how his whole journey really emphasizes this importance of self-awareness.
Yeah.
Right?
Ooh, interesting. Okay.
So he starts reflecting on his past experiences, and he notices how, his fear has kind of tripped him up before.
Right. Like we've all been there.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And, he kind of has this realization that so often the anticipation of the change, the thought of it, is actually way worse than the actual change itself.
That is so true. We build things up in our mind. Right. And then that's like, wait, that wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
And as Ha starts to let go of that fear a little bit, he begins to notice all these things that he hadn't seen before, right? He starts to see that, for example, like the cheese at Cheese Station C, it didn't just vanish overnight, right?
Yeah, there were signs, I'm sure.
There were signs. He just missed them. He wasn't paying attention. And I think, again, that's such a powerful lesson for all of us, like the importance of staying present, of paying attention to those subtle shifts happening around us.
Because it is so easy, like especially when we're comfortable, you know? You kind of get in your routine and it's like you're just cruising along. But like you said earlier, change is inevitable, right?
It is.
The cheese is going to move eventually.
It will. And when it does, the question becomes, are we going to be caught off guard like him?
Right.
Just complaining about how unfair it all is?
Right.
Or are we going to try to be a little bit more like our, adventurous mice friends, Sniff and Scurry?
See, they make it seem so easy, though.
Right.
Sniff it out early, take action, don't overthink it. Boom, done. But I guess that brings me to something I've always kind of wondered. It's easy to say, be more like the mice.
Yeah.
But we're not mice. We're people.
Right.
We experience fear and doubt. We get attached to things. So how does Who Moved My Cheese address that very human side of change? It's like, we can know logically, okay, change is going to happen, but it's that emotional side, right?
Yeah.
That can really trip us up.
Totally.
Because it's easy for Sniff and Scurry, right? They're like, zip, on to the next cheese station, we're done here. But for us little people, it's not always so simple.
It is not. And I think that's where Ha's journey, becomes so relatable for a lot of us.
Totally.
Because he embodies that struggle that we all have with trying to overcome our more, I guess, human instincts.
Yeah.
The fear, the doubt, even that sentimentality that we can get, that keeps us kind of glued to the way that things used to be.
And he doesn't always get it right either. Like he stumbles, he hesitates. He's even writing those little encouraging messages to himself on the walls of the maze.
Exactly. And, those messages I think are crucial because Who Moved My Cheese does so well is it reminds us that we don't have to be perfect at this whole change thing.
Right.
It's a process, and it's okay to feel those feelings. It's okay to acknowledge the fear, maybe even embrace it a little bit, as long as we don't let it totally paralyze us.
There's a lot of freedom in that. Just acknowledging, like, I'm feeling this way. It's okay, but I'm not going to let it, like you said, stop me from moving forward.
Exactly. Yeah, it's about finding that balance.
Yeah.
Like acknowledging that, yeah, we're human, we're going to have these feelings, but also remembering that we are capable of, far more than we often give ourselves credit for.
Right. Don't underestimate yourself.
Exactly. Remember, he does eventually find new cheese.
He does.
He does. He gets there. And when he does, it's not even just about the cheese itself at that point. It's the realization that, I'm capable of this. I can change. I can grow. I can create a whole new reality for myself.
And he does it all without knowing for sure what's out there.
Right.
He takes that leap of faith, even though he's not guaranteed that it's going to work out.
Yeah. And that's the real takeaway here, right?
Okay.
Sometimes the most rewarding experiences, the most delicious cheese, I guess you could say, comes from those moments where we're actually brave enough to kind of let go of what's familiar and just step into the unknown.
You've given us so much to think about today. I really appreciate it. But before we wrap up, I keep coming back to him.
Yeah.
Do you think he ever leaves Cheese Station C? Does he ever find his way to new cheese?
That's the question, isn't it?
It is.
And I kind of appreciate that the book, it doesn't really offer us a neat and tidy answer. It leaves us with that possibility, which I think is kind of nice. It's a good reminder, I think, that change, especially in other people, is often just, it's not really in our control, is it?
All right, everyone's on their own journey, moving through the maze at their own pace.
Exactly. And all we can do is, we can offer support. We can share what worked for us. But ultimately, that choice to change, the choice to get up and go look for new cheese, that belongs to each individual.
So as we're all navigating our own mazes out here, what would you say is the most important thing to remember from Who Moved My Cheese? What's like the one nugget of wisdom that we can kind of carry with us?
I think for me, it's this. Change is inevitable. The cheese will move. But it's how we choose to respond to that, whether we embrace the adventure or whether we stay stuck in fear and longing for the past. That's really what defines our journey.
Beautifully said. And I think that's a perfect note to end on. A huge thank you to our expert for guiding us through this deep dive into Who Moved My Cheese. It's one of those stories that really sticks with you.
It really does.
And for everyone listening, next time you're facing a change, big or small, just remember those characters in the maze and ask yourself, what would I do if I wasn't afraid? You might just be surprised at what you discover.
I love that.